You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
Edge-show.com. Edge-show.com. The hyphen is stupid. Edge-show.com.
If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
The winner of the World Series of Poker main event this year. Not an easy task to win the main event in poker. He joins us in this episode. Almost 8,000 poker players entered this event, and he beat them all. It was the longest heads up, which means one-on-one at the end. You know, they get that 8,000 field down to two people. This guy, Cynn, and his opponent. And that went on longer than any other heads-up part of the tournament in history. The other thing you should know about Cynn, the World Series of Poker main event champion for 2018, is that he played the World Series of Poker main event 2 years ago. And when you get to the final 10, everybody's guaranteed $1 million. And Cynn finished 11th, just out of the $1 million. So you could say, well, I mean, that's as close as you're going to get. I mean, that's pretty damn close. And still you did well. Nope. As close as you're going to get for Cynn is winning the event, which he did this year, $8.8 million, as well as the most prestigious trophy in poker, the main event bracelet. Here's what we're doing in this episode. We're going to keep all the conversation on a level that even if you don't play poker, you'll be able to follow. But people who do play poker, we will walk through a couple of key hands. There's a key bluff that worked against Cynn, and then there's the key hand where you see Cynn win at the end. So we'll include some audio from ESPN and some discussion around that. But again, we'll try to always explain everything, so even if you don't play poker, you'll be able to appreciate what's going on. And going through the whole episode, there's only one term that we don't explain, and so I'm going to give it to you now. It's when there's a reference to someone repping or I rep this, it means I'm representing. So if I rep a pair of aces, it means I'm representing the fact that I have a pair of aces. But you know what? You'll love this conversation, even if you don't play cards or have any particular interest in the poker itself. I think just to get a texture for this world of poker is really cool. So excited to have Cynn on. I'm joined by J.Elvis Weinstein, documentary filmmaker, comic, the original voice of Servo on Mystery Science Theater, and his movie, I Need You to Kill, which is all about comedy in Asia through the eyes of three comics who are on tour through Asia, is streamable now on Amazon. Speaking of Amazon, what a great way to support this show. If you want to support our show, please, if you're going to shop Amazon, do it through our website, edge-show.com. You can click on the Amazon link. It'll take you to the same Amazon you'd normally go to. Buy whatever you want. We can't see what you buy. We can't see what you spend, but they'll give us a little piece of whatever people spend there if they go through our website. So edge-show.com. Click on an episode and you'll see an Amazon link there. Anywhere it says Amazon, if you click on it, we'll get credit for you having clicked through our website. A couple of you have sent us cash donations through the PayPal link. Thank you very much. Every dollar stays with the show. In fact, we had to upgrade our security for our website, so that cost a few dollars too. So thanks to those of you who've made contributions or supported us through the Amazon link. Michael Shore's away, so no political talk on this episode. Just get right into John. Let's get started.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
They let guys just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow. Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use for.
Oh, got it.
Give me a 10. Just count to 10 for me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Just count to 8.8 million for me, John.
I don't know if I could do that.
See what I did? I tied in the big verse.
Yeah, that was very nice.
Make it rain!
Should we ask to borrow money from John now, or should we wait till later?
Let's ingratiate ourselves first.
Okay, good thinking.
There is a $1,200 buy-in for this podcast.
I came prepared.
Welcome to Cynn, poker's new reigning champion, the winner of the World Series of Poker 2018. It is so cool to have you with us.
Mazel tov on that.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
First of all, John, when I saw it, when I started watching on TV, I realized, wait a minute, I play cards with that guy. I know that guy.
Yeah.
We had met before, hadn't we?
Yeah, a few years back, about 4 years ago.
Sort of in the home game circuit.
That's right.
By the way, it's so nice. Usually when I'm meeting people that Mark knows, it's from his vegan subculture as opposed to his cool subculture that he belongs to.
I was vegan for a little bit.
Were you?
Yeah. I tried being vegan, went pescatarian for a while. Would aspire to. I'd like to go back to being vegan, but it's
Yeah,
tough.
that's what he said, Josh. You
No,
have to go back.
it's a perfectly legit thing to do. I just don't want to talk about it for a minute.
but here's the thing. But what you did, Josh, was quite disparaging. You said one of his cool poker
I know.
friends.
I meant to be disparaging.
I know you did.
It's a comedy tactic.
Everything's deliberate with you.
You know, there is like a vegan community in poker.
I bet.
And
They're everywhere.
I don't know if I don't know if the correlation is real, but they all seem to be quite good at poker.
Well, there's a discipline factor.
There is a discipline factor.
In
There's-
both.
Yeah, I mean, are you one of those good vegan poker players, Mark? Or
He's a good vegan.
Yeah, I'm bringing down the curve in the world of poker. I'm just unlucky. I like to think of it that way, John. I mean, I
Very
think
possible.
if I ran a little bit hotter, I would be a very wealthy man.
Is it possible, do you think? Is that a legit reason?
yeah, I think like I don't know like the crazy overall numbers, but
Right.
I know like variance is a very real thing. Like you can, it's not impossible to go for like ridiculous stretches of time and play good and just not win. Like it's.
But
it's
do you
very
believe
possible.
is that the fate of the odds, or is that the fate of the person at work?
Are you asking me if it's like a karma
Like,
related thing?
are there unlucky people? Is
You
my
know,
question.
there is. I don't know about if this goes with unlucky, but I do know about this one poker player who's like, top tier world class tournament player. And I heard, when he goes all in, he, thinks of the card that's going to come. He goes, like when the turn's about to come, he'll go Queen of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, and he believes that, and he and he's one of the best. So it's.
But doesn't even shitty poker players do that?
Everybody
I
does
do
that.
when
Everybody
I'm
does it.
I mean,
I'm going
everybody-
Queen of Hearts, Queen of Hearts, Queen of
It
Hearts.
is weird that there, you do sort of look to the universe, leaving God and all this other crap behind, because God doesn't give it what the turn card is. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it is weird. It's tough not to have so much on the line and look to the fates. Look to the universe.
Sure, and I always, am hopeful of a card, envision a card, whatever. But I have no real belief that what my thought process is will defy the odds of poker, and
Yeah.
for a world class, someone who's probably way better than I am and has like,
No,
crazy
I'm
amounts.
afraid no one is better than you. You are the world
Not
champion.
not for the main event. Nobody. Yeah, I haven't busted the main event yet, which is weird. But for someone of that caliber of a player, it's funny. It's interesting.
Well, what's always funny to me also is that these players who are also of incredibly high caliber blame the dealers so often. They know that the dealers have nothing to do with it, but they need focus for their anger, abuse, frustration, whatever.
And that has to
sort
be,
of
I guess
blame.
that has to some extent, has to be a resistance to go, I'm not lucky. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I played everything right. I did everything, by my book, whatever my book is. But still something went wrong. So either the universe is against me or the dealer's an asshole.
Well, the dealer is nothing. A dealer could be a machine, right? The dealer
Right.
does nothing.
Right. Which I used to play on those poker machines too. And so, it's always something, whether you play online or whether you play in person, like, oh, the algorithm's rigged. Like, this site is
Right.
always, there's, when you deal with so many cards and so much variance, like you're always going to find patterns, like you might find that someone who's wearing short sleeves and deals to you, always gives you the worst beats. The patterns just exist, whether they're correlated or not. That's kind of up to you to figure out.
I love that you said that, because that's absolutely true. Gamblers particularly
Yes.
begin to put together patterns that
Right.
certainly in the randomness of gambling, that they have nothing to do with outcome.
Yeah, this is the basis of superstition, really.
Right.
Right. As you were coming up as a poker player, just because we mentioned this, do you have like a lucky hat, a lucky shirt, any of that superstition stuff? And even if you know it's not really grounded in reality, do you do it just because you need to pay it off somehow in your mind?
So I try very hard not to be a superstitious person, and I believe in some form of karma, but I don't believe I believe bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people. This is just the way the world is. With that said, I do very much believe in the power of positivity, you're having your mentality clear, and I think good decisions will help you lead to more good decisions, which will lead to better results. So for example, in the tournament, if you watched every day that I was on TV, I never changed my hoodie or my jeans. And it's not that I believe that, my hoodie is bringing me good cards, but my hoodie is comfortable. There might be something like, okay, if I change my hoodie and something goes wrong, then I might start blaming the hoodie, stuff like that.
Yeah,
like
the butterfly effect.
Right.
You don't want to start.
Small little things that probably aren't real that I consider. But then, there are real things that I consider. Like if I keep my hoodie on, it's comfortable. I know it's comfortable. I don't have to think about what I'm going to wear the next day, so I mean there's practicality in it, but there's also there is a side of unrealistic expectations that come from it too.
And do you have what are your sort of dispositional tactics at the table? Some guys will put up their hoodie and put sunglasses on. What?
I don't think I have any of those really. Yeah. Probably the thing that surprised me the most during the main event was how comfortable I was. Everyone noticed it. But I definitely noticed it because, I'm normally the type, if I bluff, I start getting nervous, what can they read me? And my heart will start pumping and stuff like that.
Right.
But for some reason, during this main, with that mentality, that positive mentality, just play your best. It doesn't matter what happens. The results will go where they go. You can't control whether you get knocked out fifth or whether you win the tournament. So being okay with the result no matter what happens, as long as you're happy with the process, that allowed me to be very calm and really be myself during the tournament.
I mean, but that mental discipline or that outlook, maybe a better way to describe it, is hard because there's so much on the line. I mean, it's easy to go, well, yeah, I could do that. I could
Absolutely.
have a positive. Well, when you get in there and we're talking about millions of dollars and getting and assessing situations where you have the overwhelming percentage in your favor or not knowing whether you have the overwhelming percentage in your favor. I just think that it's very difficult to maintain that attitude.
It's extremely difficult, and but I think that's also a reason why we're talking about it right now. If it was something that everyone does or can do, it wouldn't be a topic. But I think this isn't just relevant to poker. I think it's really relevant to my life. And
you're saying you have that positivity about other things in your life,
right? I try to enjoy the journey no matter what I'm doing. The results will fall where they fall, whether they're good or bad. But if you can twist every situation so that it's a positive, so that you grow from it, so that then at that point things can't really be bad. And I do feel a little guilty saying it. After winning the main event, it seems easy to say, but it is something that I really believe that helped me win the main event. Which is kind of ironic. Finally you get to a point in life where you're like, I don't need to win the main, and then that helps you win the main because of your mentality.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, I think that's true in any rarefied sort of situation. I mean, Hollywood is another example of it, where desperation is never your ally in Hollywood. No matter how much talent you have, people sense that neediness about you. It's repellent to them.
Yeah, in meetings or in auditions or whatever, they tell you to go in with the attitude that I don't care. And you always hear those stories from people who've made punch through in a big way. Yeah, I went in, I finally decided I've had enough of this crap. I'm moving back to Indiana, and that was the audition that I got, and now I'm a movie star, I'm going to leave the poker part of it a little bit later. This isn't a poker podcast per se, but we do want to get into a couple of situations because I think it's interesting, and I do think the people who are listening will understand it. We're not going to get into super complicated poker stuff, but I want to start with the money and all of that stuff that is associated with your victory because it's quite extraordinary. The World Series of Poker main event champion, John Cynn, walked away with $8.8 million. First of all, they put all this money on the table in front of you. When it's just you and the other guy, they put all this money on the table. They stack up all of these $10,000 hundreds, right?
It was easily the biggest pile of money I've ever seen in my life.
And is it the actual amount on the table, or is it just a prop amount?
I don't know if they put 8.8 million up there or not, but that's what I've been told to believe. Or that that's what they told me.
That it was the actual amount.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if that was an official, them telling me, or if I just, if I just heard it on the rail somewhere. But
I just assumed it was a prop, but maybe they really was the money. We'll have a picture of it on our website, edge-show.com, if you want to see John Cynn and this pile of stacks of banded hundreds in $10,000 bands. How do they give you the money when you win?
They give you an option. You could take wire, check, chips, or cash. And you can split it up however you want. So I believe if I had asked for all of it cash, they would have given me 165 pounds worth of $100 bills. That's something my friend told me. He's like, that's 165 pounds. I'm like, how do you even know that?
That is great that he knows it.
Sir, your luggage is overweight.
I split it between cash and wire. I took 300,000 in cash, and then the rest I had wired to my bank.
It's not really splitting it.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that was, that was probably the first time, or one of the only times maybe, that it really hit me how much money I had, was when I asked for 300. I was like, that's not going to be much compared to the 8.5. But then they just brought out these like bricks of hundreds, and I was like, there's that much more behind going wired into my bank. I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
When you got to this final table, how rare of air was that for you? Had you gotten close to this before? I'm sorry, I don't.
2016, you made a run, didn't you?
2016, I got 11th in the main event.
Okay.
Which is, when you hear it and you don't really know poker or tournaments, it sounds like, oh, you went deep twice, cool. But even getting 11th is like unreal.
And did that change your poker life at the time?
Absolutely. That at the time was my biggest score by far.
And it paid over 300,000, right?
650,000.
600,000. Okay.
Yeah. And actually, I'm really fortunate to have. I keep telling people that the luckiest thing about this whole entire situation is that I got the 650,000, made a ton of mistakes, lost a lot of that money, and now I just have a chance to do it all over again with a lot more money, knowing which mistakes I've made and learning from that,
I want to get back to the main event, but just because you mentioned that, what mistakes did you make with that 650,000?
I mean, it was just a lot of poor money management, whether that meant playing too big for my bankroll, because I do have a degenerate side in me, where I do love to gamble.
That's what we love about you, John.
I probably have a little bit too much of a trusting side, and lent money to a lot of wrong people, invested in businesses that weren't exactly straight up with me about stuff, things like that.
He's a gambler. He can handle it.
Well, no, but what's interesting about this guy we're talking to, John, is that he is, and we'll get into this a little bit too, your investment strategies. He's someone who knows the markets. I mean, he's been in crypto. He's done well in this world of crypto. So, in other words, you're not an easy mark per se, but you still succumb to friends who had an investment.
Yeah, it is, it is different when the first time you have a significant amount of cash and all these opportunities start coming to you. Everything looks amazing, When people give you an offer, it sounds amazing, but you don't realize what happens on the back end of the deal. Like you would think that, for example, you would lend someone money and that they would be grateful, pay you back, they'd be good to you, whatever. But it's like almost the opposite. You lend someone money, they stop paying interest. All of a sudden, you have to do whatever they want to do. Stuff like that.
Yeah, all of a sudden they go MIA on you.
Yeah, and crypto, I've only been in for maybe a year and a half. But these aren't things that knowing markets or anything like that teaches you. And like even before when I had little bits of money, I've definitely lent out money to be burned. For like a few hundred here and there. But still, I think these are tough lessons to learn in life.
You mentioned playing above maybe where you should when you won all that money initially.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in poker, they talk about that, where even within a game you win a lot and you get what they call chip happy, where you start calling a lot of flops and raising. You begin to just act like a rich guy in a game.
Yeah, the money doesn't seem real. The money seems easy. You don't think you can lose. And then there's also the fact of like you develop an ego, I think, sometimes. And I've learned very quickly that the ego it just strikes you down. Anytime you have a big score and you think things are going to be good and easy, it just crushes you. So.
I used to play with comics a lot when I was on the road, and if there would be those games where you'd play with a very successful comic, and he'd start going down, and then he'd start bullying people with his money,
Yeah. I played with Drew Carey over at Sam Simon's house.
Yeah.
I'll never forget because I made a ridiculous fold because he just put so much pressure on me. I thought, well, the guy can't possibly be throwing that much money at it unless he's got a set. And I folded top 2, and it was just. It was this most stupid fold, and of course he didn't. He had just top or whatever.
But when people aren't thinking about money in terms of the game in front of them, it's
right?
a
They're thinking they don't care about the money. And you would say, and most would say, then you don't belong in that game if you can't make that call because scared money never wins type thing, or it was just a bad read. But one way or the other, you have to respond to the situation, I guess, and not think about the money all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this kind of goes back to my personal life philosophy where you're enjoying everything. If you're in that position where if you get bluffed and it's gonna destroy you, you're probably not playing in a game that's reasonable. I remember when I found out Tony bluffed me, I thought it was great. I was like, this kid's got heart, and I love it. It was just so much fun. It was such a cool hand. Obviously, even though I lost and got bluffed on national.
That was the
TV.
7-5 and the 6-4.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You want to hear that, a little bit of it?
Sure, if you got it. Let's
Yeah. This is weird because normally you play the
winning
winning thing. We'll play the winning thing in a second, but this is a real tough spot. John has 6-4. And the guy he's up against has 7-5. This is at the very end, right? This last day was really a marathon.
Yeah, it was. This was actually a little bit earlier in the heads-up match because somebody told me that ESPN had a little timer thing of this is how long it's been since Cynn could have called and ended the tournament, and it was 7 hours. I was like, that's great.
That's brutal. Yeah. There are just 2 of you left.
Cynn hits that flop with the 4.
So you've made a pair,
This is a
right?
good shot.
Yeah, on the flop I had middle pair, which is a low pair, but still middle pair.
Right, it's a pair of 4s. So again, he's got 7-5, you've got 6-4, you have a pair of 4s. He has nothing,
This is like
although
an MMA match where
he has a gut
Cynn
shot,
has
meaning a
his
6
opponent
would
on the
give him a
canvas
straight.
and just will not let him up.
No, I mean, when you're the chip leader, you have to just keep hammering away.
They're talking with the
max
chip leader,
pressure on
that's
your
you,
opponent.
right?
At that time, yes.
A 6 would be detrimental for Cynn here.
And the board pairs 3s. Again, those of you listening, the cards in the center are
Still
3,
good.
4, Jack, 3. And now he checks
Still
to
good.
you.
His opponent did call the flop out of position, right? So you might want to give him credit for a jack or
It's
a
on the
3 at this
turn,
point.
yeah.
I might consider checking back the 4, controlling the size of the pot here.
Cynn is going to test it.
But this is interesting.
Once.
He checked. He was representing something. Then he checked to you. And then you bet because you wanted to see where you were in this thing, I assume, right?
Yeah, and I think Antonio's commentary is spot on. I think, almost all the time, the correct move would be to check back. I had a, mediocre hand on the flop, which, when the 3 comes on the turn, all of a sudden, all the hands that I beat on the flop all of a sudden beat me, because if he had a 3, now he has trips. And the only hands that I beat are flush draws, straight draws, stuff like that. So I think the standard would be to check back.
So here's what happens.
He check raises me on the turn.
On the turn he does.
So Antonio says I should probably check back the turn. I end up betting the turn, which is against what most people would say is the correct play.
Right.
So the second 3 appears on the turn?
And the second 3 appears on the turn, and I still bet it.
Okay.
So now I have one of the worst hands possible. That's a made hand. But I'm thinking that, he might have some ace highs. And the paired board is kind of good for me too, because no draws hit, right? All the flush draws and straight draws are still there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and he does it.
He does it.
So when you called, everybody's going, wow, what a great call.
On the turn, yeah.
On the turn. And then the river comes the king of diamonds. So now the flush is out there if he's got 2 diamonds. If he's got a king, if he was playing ace king pre-flop or something, that's out there now. And then he does
it.
this.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and he does it.
Where Antonio
With
gets
the
excited
shove,
because even Antonio doesn't think he would pull
with
a
an
bluff this
amazing
big.
opportunity.
And I would have
Can he
never
call
expected it.
this
And so
here?
when I find out that
difficult
he's
call. That's an
pulling this bluff, I'm
extremely
like,
difficult card
that's
on the river to
great.
call with.
You actually were quite gracious as you were through the whole thing going, wow, it's a great move. You
Yeah,
even said it
you're
at the
right.
time.
I said it at the time. I said, you know what? If you're sick enough, and I was smiling. I said, if you're sick enough to bluff this hand right now, I'm just gonna let you have it.
Yeah, you deserve the
Yeah,
pot.
you deserve it. Here you go.
Here you are.
If you're sick enough to pull this bluff off, I think I just have to let you have it. I don't have a very good hand at all.
And a fold.
And you fold.
Tony Miles bluff.
Nice hand, Tony.
Apparently so. And is he just staring rock stone face as you're saying that?
I mean, at this point, he's collecting chips. I think he's happy. His rail is cheering for him, so
Just like, I mean, when you're deciding if
Oh,
you're gonna
deciding?
fold,
Yeah, I think, he's trying to be stone cold, not give off anything,
Right.
Did you pick up anything, or at that point is it just sort of pattern recognition on betting and that kind of thing?
For that specific hand, the reason that I would suspect a bluff is because of how the hand played out. When the king of diamonds comes on the river. So Antonio's commentary was spot on here too. When he check raises me on the turn, he's repping a 3. But then a 3 on the river all of a sudden isn't a good hand because the king of diamonds comes. So now his story doesn't line up exactly.
Right, you're saying a flush now could is that what you're saying? A flush could
Right.
beat the 3?
It's tough, so if we're going to break down from a poker pattern perspective, if he has a flush draw, he might check raise me a lot on the flop. He could do it sometimes on the turn, but if he does it on the turn, the board is paired, so he's probably not going to go all in on the river when he hits his flush. And then the actual hand that he was repping on the turn, which was the trip 3s, is also probably not going to go all in on the river when the flush comes, because now that hand is weak. So, there were a couple stories that he was trying to tell that just didn't add up. So that was the reason why I suspected bluff in that spot.
It's great. I mean, again, you have to tell a credible story is what poker is all about, right? If you're going to bluff.
And more than giving Tony credit for, just being able to pull off that bluff, it's hard to think straight sometimes when you're bluffing too, So just to have enough heart to go for it's pretty cool.
That was really, you gave him a lot of credit. Your general demeanor is friendly and open. That is who you are, it seems. But also, even in this environment of the WSOP, you were a little less kind of repping being the assassin.
That seems like a tactic too, though, to me.
Is
the
it a
comfort in your
tactic?
skin seems like it can be an intimidating thing to someone who's all up in their head.
For sure, when you're loose and open at the table, it gets other people to relax too, which is great. And I think I was talking about this on Live at the Bike or something, and I was just saying but it's more than that. It's you do it so that you enjoy what you're doing, and so that you make other people enjoy what they're doing, and that everyone's having fun together. It's not like be nice so you can manipulate someone sort of thing. It's not because I remember
Josh.
I remember some of the other pros were asking me, you think it's really bad for the game when someone's wearing headphones, not talking to anybody, and only talks poker strategy? Yeah, of course it's bad for the game, and I do blame a lot of that for a lot of action going down at the casinos. And I was like, but that shouldn't be your reason for being friendly and open at the table. This is just more of a life philosophy, not a poker philosophy.
I love you said that. I don't play at the casinos much anymore because I can't stand how quiet. It's like a church in there. Everybody's got earbuds in. Right. No one says anything. I'm a social player. I want to talk to people.
It's a social game.
Yeah.
I never really did well online, and it's because I didn't really enjoy it online. And then when I was playing at the casinos and this trend started happening, I stopped playing at casinos because it was soul sucking. Who wants to sit there and be miserable, for 8 hours?
So you rose through private games, essentially?
Yeah, some private games, some lucky breaks like the main event, stuff like that. But I have been playing in a decent amount of private games.
How long have you been playing?
Poker?
Yeah.
I learned back in 2001 when I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
Take us through your education, just briefly through your education career, like a real mainstream job, and then when you decided, wait a minute, I'm going to play poker full time.
Yeah, so I learned the game in high school, and I went to a very good high school, I believe.
Where was that?
Suburbs of Chicago.
Okay.
And then I went to Indiana University, graduated from their business school, obviously a great school, studied finance, supply chain. And I remember going back in between classes. I loved the game so much back then. And love the game so much is a nice way of saying it. I was an addicted degenerate is the real way to say it.
So classes were getting in the way of your game, is what you're saying.
And back then I wasn't good. I was losing a ton of money, especially
playing
for
with
me
the Cutters
at the time.
in Bloomington.
And then after I graduated, I picked up a job as an analyst, got laid off after a year. It was actually funny. So I played volleyball in college, and when I moved to Indianapolis, I was looking for a place to play volleyball. I hit up this one club, and they said, well, we don't really have volleyball games, but we're looking for coaches if you want to coach. The person who owns the club is one of my best friends now, Lance Keating. When we found out that we each other played poker, we just assumed that the other person was awful, a degenerate gambler. Oh, okay, yeah, I bet you play poker, type of thing. And Lance just ended up being, at the time, one of the best poker players I've ever known, you know? Some of the sickest stories, like, you wouldn't believe. And, you know, when me and him would start talking poker, like, that's when I thought, wow, like, I think I can actually get good enough to make a living. Anyway, so after a year, I got laid off after a year, decided to play poker for a year. And it was okay. But then there was the pressure of society saying, or my family saying, you know, have a normal job, live a normal life. And I kind of thought, you know, poker will always be there, but if I take more time off of work, I might not be able to get another job. So I decided to go back to work. And I did that for a few years and eventually ended up being an IT consultant, which I think, you know, as far as my character goes, it's probably like a good fit. It's probably one of the better jobs I could ask for. But still, eventually, I ended up quitting my job and wanting to pursue poker.
The last hand. You have on this last hand, this is the hand worth $8.8 million, King Jack. He has, this guy Tony Miles, Queen 8. So your King Jack is a really good hand, right?
Yeah, and heads up, it's a really good hand. And this hand was interesting to begin with because, well, I raised my button. But I don't remember exactly when he claimed it, but he claimed to see one of my cards. He said, I'm pretty sure I saw one of your cards flash. But I just have such a good hand, I'm not sure that I want to fold it, even if he might have seen one of my cards.
Right.
So he says that, and I wait for 20 seconds, look at Jack, see if he's going to make some sort of ruling.
He's the floor man.
Yeah, he's the floor man watching everything happen. And so after I, wait a little bit and he doesn't make a ruling, I just assume that we can just play. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to fold King Jack.
And then we get to what happened.
Pair, right? Called 9 and raised over the size of the pot.
That's his raise.
Yeah.
You had the button, which means he acted first, then you acted.
Right.
You raised, and then he re-raised you to $34 million.
Correct.
Okay. And now it's $25 million more for you to call, and that's what you're thinking about right now when we pick up the action.
Okay.
Never raise that much with a big pair, right? Called 9 and raised over the size of the pot.
And so this spot was
Cynn
interesting because
might figure the puzzle
he had
out
just accumulated a lot of chips. So throughout the heads-up match, he had been very aggressive, but he was getting short on chips, and so he toned down his aggression a little bit, and this is the first time he got chips and bet big to begin with. So it was kind of a tough spot for me. It's like, well, is he raising me because now he wants to be aggressive again, or is he raising me because he has an actual hand?
Right. And you did call.
I did call. So
Pretty good sized pre-flop pot.
You know, it's interesting these days. You just don't see it as much, Norman. But in the past, sometimes
That's Phil Hellmuth's
maybe the old school players might some of these spots might just consider just moving in if they feel some weakness rather than call and just win it risk free.
Yeah, win it or lose
I'm
it
not
risk
saying
free. Yeah.
Wow.
So the flop comes King,
really
King
gone,
5.
King
loving life
Jack.
at that
Yeah.
point.
I guess. Yeah.
2 hearts in there
Cannot ask
for
for
Miles.
much
Yeah.
better.
And again,
Who cares about
John
them?
has a King Jack.
Here comes Miles. He's going to bet.
He doesn't know what the
33
other guy has, but it's
million.
presumably not a King.
Da, da,
With
da.
2 of them out there.
Just raised it to $34 million.
Well, he could bet 40.
So now he's thinking, and he grabs a bunch of chips. The
And
guy
here
you're up
it
against, this guy
comes.
Tony Miles.
John Cynn.
Now,
I'm
are you
surprised he's 4%
praying for a
on this
jack
spot.
at this point to
Can't
come up,
taste
or are you
this.
just like
Heart hit
you've already
sometimes.
this
There
it's
it
already been
is.
set?
Hasn't been set. I
said
mean,
32. It's 32.
I would love a jack,
It's at 33.
but at the same time,
Dang it.
Which is
there's not a ton of cards that I hate. I think I would hate it if a flush got there.
It's at 33. He was
But I
close.
mean, a jack just makes it more secure.
Beauty,
So
and like Mike the Mouth likes to say.
You're John Cynn on this.
So he
King,
bet
King
32
5
million.
flop holding King Jack.
He let out for 3, but that makes sense because he
really easy.
he's the aggressor.
re-raised.
I like
He's
the
the
fact
aggressor
he's
pre-flop.
He's
Studying,
repping
before the
a
card.
big hand
studying.
here.
Oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my
He's repping a big
ace-jack
hand,
high.
but I love my hand right now.
Sure, and that's what they're saying. John is pretending, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. We'll skip a little bit further ahead.
Yeah, I think in this heads-up match or at the final table, people notice like there's not a lot of tanking, and I don't think I ever tanked just for the sake of tanking. But
Tanking means thinking for a long time.
right. Well, yeah, and for some people might see what I'm doing now and just say like, oh, he's tanking just to make it look like he doesn't know what to do. But the reality is, I'm thinking, what's the best play here? It's, am I
Sure.
just calling? Am I raising? If I raise, how much do I raise? stuff like that.
Right. You're not just Hollywooding.
Right. I'm not Hollywooding. I'm not trying to make it be like I have a bad hand.
You're not being dramatically
right.
correct.
Right. I mean, I'd probably take a little longer maybe if I was trying to do that, but I don't really believe in that.
I mean, went crazy bluffing.
1/3 of the chips on the table in play in the middle of the pot right now.
Oh, brutal card.
And now
The eight
Miles
comes
eight.
up. So he's got an 8,
that's
this
the
guy,
last
Tony
card
Miles.
in
So
the
now
deck.
he's hit the board.
He has
So here's one way to think of this hand.
Tournament.
That's
It's
the
over.
best thing that could
Tournament's
happen to you,
over.
essentially. Then.
John Cynn.
Actually, I don't know if that's the best thing that could happen to me. Turned out to be the best thing that could happen to me. Sure.
Here's how I decoded it. I gave you a lot of credit for thinking here at the end. What happens is when that 8 hits, this guy, Tony Miles, moves all in. And now John, our hero, is all of a sudden thinking. And they're in the booth going, what is he thinking about? Why is he taking so long? I'll play a little bit of that maybe. But I'm giving you credit for actually being deliberate about this. For example, maybe this is just because this is the life I lead. The guy I'm up against could be repping pocket 8s the whole time. That 8 hits, and now he's hit a boat. Or whatever. I mean, it's not as though the naked king is necessarily a guarantee that it's an insta-call.
Sure.
Okay, what part of that, maybe makes sense?
No, I think a lot of that makes sense. Poker's a great game because people think about different spots in different ways, and we could all be right. Sometimes it sparks argument. Sometimes people are adamant that one side's right and one side's not. But the reality is, it just kind of depends. Every situation kind of depends. For me, there were a couple spots where I acted very quickly in big spots and wished that I had taken a little bit of time to think about it. So automatically, Phil Hellmuth might snap call here because he just knows he's never folding, knows that he's not going to do anything different. But my automatic response is don't snap any decision. Give it a little bit of thought. With that said, I did think for a little while.
Did you think, though, that there's just no way I'm not good here, or did you think through some of the things I mentioned?
I definitely thought through some of the things you mentioned because, when he does 3-bet, he is repping king, queen, ace, king, pocket 8s, hands that could beat me. And he's been so aggressive that he could have, king 8, king 5, kings that I had beat before and don't have beat anymore. And, people who snap call would just say, these are just coolers. There's nothing you can do about it. You have trips. It's such a strong hand. What are you waiting for? But with
I've lost a lot of money like that, where you go, well, if he's got it, he's got it. I got a call here.
Sure.
A cooler is when you have a good hand and he's got a slightly better hand. Anyway, go ahead.
Absolutely. And I've lost a lot of money like that. And there's just hands, and this is one of those hands where if you're getting cooler, you just have to lose. There's nothing you can do about it. If you fold here, you're kind of, whatever. But it doesn't hurt to take some time to think about it. You played the last bluff earlier, so that hand went through my head. And when I found out he was bluffing, I also knew that he found out that I was thinking about calling with a very bad hand. And so I kind of thought that, maybe he'll be a little more careful with his all-ins because he knows I'm capable of calling with a hand. So that was kind of like a adjustment that I had made. And
that's huge information. Hang on a second. So you, during the break, because they're regular breaks, you go over to your people and they say he was working a bluff during that other hand.
Right.
So you're
We're
now
on a
aware
30-minute
of that.
delay.
Because it's a 30-minute delay. Thank you. I didn't know that. So then when you go back to the table, you're now armed with the knowledge that that was a bluff before.
Right.
And he's armed with the knowledge that you almost called a bluff before.
Right.
So
and we both know that each other know that information.
Right.
There's a
So
lot of information
so that calculation has to go into this situation, as you say.
Absolutely.
He's less likely to bluff, knowing that you're more likely to call with some of these weak hands.
Right. Or you would think.
And so when he moves in, you're thinking, wow, he knows all that, and he's moving in. He might really have a hand that beats mine.
Right. Or
God,
yeah,
that's interesting.
and and there's so many ways to read it. You know, and his thought process just could have been, my all-in worked. It's gonna work again, and I just have the completely wrong read, and it's gonna lead to the wrong decisions. But I mean, there's things that I'm considering while I'm sitting there. It's not just I have a good hand, but I'm gonna wait to call. Like that was never what I was doing. That was never the intent.
Gotcha.
Just has to say call.
Count, please. So I asked for a count here, which I think is really standard. In a big spot, you really need to know how much chips you would have left. If I had a lot of chips left behind, then it's a snap call at that point. I find out that I would have had no chips left, basically.
Right.
And if I lost, like, no matter what happens this hand, the
This is
winners
for the
determine.
tournament.
Yeah, winners determine this hand.
But he has to know that it's
So did you
not
go in
like
nearly
Miles
equal
is
in
just
chip
moving
count
with
then
king,
to this
queen. He
hand?
would have bet a lot
Almost
less if he
exactly
had him beat.
equal.
Wow.
He's taken his time with every other decision getting to this point. No
I like
reason
it.
to rush it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
So
we
Helmuth
see
changes his mind at this
Miles
point,
drawing
says
dead.
that he likes it. But then I do a little more contemplating, and then I think he doesn't like it at that point.
It's always easier when you see both hands, you know, to...
Sure.
Call, and it's over.
I fold.
I said I don't think I can fold if that audio isn't.
And now you stand up,
I don't
And you-
think I can fold.
and you look pained
man, he's
over
going to
this.
take some of the professional poker players are going, what is taking so long?
guess you just have to
The
hope.
pros are saying, you're wasting a
a
minute
flush
of my
draw.
life.
Fuck you, Phil.
Yeah, and you know
No,
what?
no, I'm not. I don't. Yeah.
No, I know you don't say that, but I do. I mean, for all the reasons that I mentioned before, this is legitimately a decision. But you're saying it's just a cooler if he has it.
Right. You know, it's
On reflection, maybe you can say, I could never have folded it. But still,
well, even in the tournament, even during the hand, there was never a point where I changed my mind to say, I think I could fold this hand. But there are definitely times where I think about it for a while and I talk myself into the other decision. I'm kind of giving myself a chance to talk myself into the other decision, see if there's any way that I can fold here, which I think is part of the reason I'm taking so long. And I don't know if... Oh, okay. I think it's coming here.
I just really don't know. It's late.
Now I'm starting to think out
That's right.
loud.
We don't
It's a
have a
big
problem.
I know.
decision.
It's great
yeah,
TV.
you're so
I don't
effing
have ace
likable. It's
king.
great.
It's almost all of his chips,
You're
obviously.
like
if
an
he
everyman,
called
you
here
know?
and
That's
lost.
really a great thing. Like,
Yeah.
Less than
So
10
the
big
decision
blinds.
would have been made a little bit more quickly here, but I was telling him I'm not slow rolling you, and I'm saying I don't have ace king, I don't have king queen, and I was about to say, but I have king jack because I wanted to let him know I have a big hand and I'm probably calling, and I know I've taken a while. But then it comes into my head, if I say I have king jack, that might be against the rules, and this could be a big penalty. I don't want to make that mistake, so I turn to jack and say, can I talk about my hand?
Yeah.
That takes a little bit more time.
Okay. Right. Yeah. No, I'm not trying to get a read or anything. I don't think I can fold. Because I was just gonna say I didn't call with ace king or king queen, but I did call
at this
with.
point, he can't open the action.
Yeah.
So yes, you can discuss this hand. He
yeah,
just
because he
cannot
can't
answer
act.
the
He's already
question.
all in. You're allowed to say whatever you
I
want,
did
sort
call
of.
with king jack,
Which is a pretty
But at some point, it becomes taunting.
No, but that's kind of what he's saying. I'm not slow rolling him. In other words,
Right.
I'm not doing this thing where I know
No,
my
it's
hands
just-
better.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're trying to
Sick
assure him
his
that you have
stomach.
some
He
class
knows
here.
he's getting called, and he knows he just lost the World Series of Poker, bluffing it off with the old Queen 8.
And at this
Pretty
point,
unlucky turn
at
card.
this point, I'm thinking
But he knows it's
I'm
over.
calling, and the tournament's going to be decided right here. I don't want to do it, but I just have to do it. It's just going to end the tournament.
And there you go.
That's the call. And that is the tournament. John Cynn can now call himself main event champion.
Do it. Call yourself main event champion.
What time of night was that?
This was, I got an incredible amount of text at exactly 5:27. So because of the 30-minute delay, I think it was 4:57.
Wow. You've been playing all afternoon and all night.
Yeah, I think we started at 6 p.m.
Wow.
Here John is getting the championship bracelet.
Poker championship bracelet. Congratulations.
This is an extremely awkward moment in my life, you know. It's not in my nature to brag and hold things up and you know,
Yeah, you're
parade-
like almost
parade
an
things around.
anti-showboat. There's
Yeah,
nothing
I
showboaty
just-
about
yeah.
you.
This
They
is
ask
like
you to hold it up.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna upset people by saying this, but I didn't love this moment of like
Really? Okay.
of standing there and like holding up the bracelet and
I
stuff
can,
like
I
that.
can get that. I get that.
Your life has just changed forever. You're world champion.
So are you now, okay, now the psychology of the poker player, you win $8.8 million. Are you like, is there like some of this is stakes, some of this is life, or is it like it's all stakes, baby?
Stakes as in like playing card money.
Yeah, as future investment and future investment.
You know, people tell me, and people have always told me to like have some sort of savings, but in the nature of our business, like it doesn't really make sense to draw lines as to like what you can touch and what you can't touch, because the reality is if you hit that line, you have to touch it. You have to get that money.
Now you've
and you
betrayed
need
yourself.
to and you need to
Yes.
play poker with it. With that said, I'm definitely not going to play in a cash game for $8.8 million.
No, I get it, but
and some of it will go into investments.
The other thing is, just as an aside, you can get people to stake you now in some of these big games. You don't have to put up your big money if you
Sure.
want.
Yeah, if I want.
I'm just saying, does the mind go, I'm set as a human or I'm set as a poker player? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? With that money. It's
Yeah,
like-
to be honest, it's been so crazy the days after. I haven't had a lot of time to like think about what exactly I'm gonna
Sure.
do with the money. You know, I'm sure when things die down and I start being able, like I've only played
Also,
poker
it's none
like
of
2
my
or 3
business,
times.
by the way, I understand.
Oh no, yeah, I don't mind talking about it.
How
but
old are you now?
33.
You can lose and make that back a couple times.
Yeah, I
before-
think, you know,
before it
I
really
did it once
matters.
before. Maybe I'll do it again. You know.
Now, I want to talk briefly about something about the money because people who watch poker on television don't really know this. And that is that all along the way, there are deals made. Even before the tournament starts, people buy a piece of you. They say, hey, listen, I'll give you this much money. If it's a $10,000 buy-in, I'll give you $2,000 for 20%, or whatever the way it works. Tell us about those deals. Tell us if you made any of those deals.
Sure. So when people ask me how much did you win, I always state first place was $8.8 million. I never say I won $8.8 million. And that's just because I want to keep it somewhat clear that, you know, I sold some pieces to some friends as sweats.
Sweats are rooting interest, sort of.
Right, right. And a lot of times when people sell in the main event, it's to, you know, hedge and cover costs. So they'll sell at a markup or a premium. You know, people will pay extra for a certain percentage. For me, I didn't really feel like that was necessary, and these were good friends of mine, so I just sold them at face value.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're really happy about it. Everyone's really happy about it. During the main event, people swap, which is a little bit tougher because you both have to agree on the trade value. So, you know, for example, I swapped with one guy, and I had I think 2 to 3 more times his chips than him. So, you know, the swap was like, I gave him like 1% and I got like 2 or 3% of him. I don't remember exactly what the number was.
Right, but that's a typical thing. If somebody has...
It's a hedge.
Sure. And it's based on the amount of chips that you might have at that moment.
Sure. Based on a lot of factors.
On a lot of factors, okay. And then oftentimes when you get down to final table, even heads up, in a break, you'll make a deal with that person that you're up against. Tell us about that and whether or not that was even discussed.
So this is something I talked about before the night of the three-handed, just in case, you know, we wanted to make a deal, how would it happen? And people were like, you know, have a lawyer there. The World Series of Poker does not, I don't want to say they don't allow deals, but they don't support deals. So they're not going to help you make the deal.
Right, they don't approve of
Right,
you doing
right.
it.
And again, when we talk about a deal, there are 3 players left now. They couldn't decide, hey, John Cynn has the most chips, so he's going to get 60% of this $8.8 million. Then Tony's got 30%, so he's going to get 30%, et cetera. And then you can agree on that ahead of time and set apart $1 million or something, or a couple million, and just play for that.
Right.
That would be something of a deal, for example.
Sure. And so the only deal that was brought up was during our heads up match, and Tony offered, hey, do you want to chop it, which is, you know, take an even amount of money and leave 1.5 million on the side, and we just play for that 1.5 million. So then I don't know exactly what we're guaranteed, maybe like 6 million at that point, and you play for 1.5. And I had told him, you know, I want to run it by, you know, my team, people who have a stake or a rooting interest in me, see what they say, and, you know, maybe we can try and figure something out. From that point on, it just seemed like the breaks were really short. So I did talk to my team and have a counter ready for him, but it just seemed like every break we were just running back to our corners and, you know, seeing what had happened in the past 30 minutes and stuff like that, that I never
Talking
got
poker
to.
strategy.
Right. So that I never got to counter a deal to him, and we just ended up playing it out.
How frequent are the breaks?
Basically every commercial break. They filmed every hand that we played. So the only structured breaks that I knew of would be at the end of the levels. But other than that, they would run to commercial once in a while and be like, all right, quick, you guys have like a 2-minute break, go. You know.
And so there's people there's people in a separate room watching a delayed feed that you're able to communicate with.
I mean,
that's interesting. Where are those people who are watching it on television?
Yeah, so I had a few.
Because you have people there in the arena, we can
Right.
see them.
Yeah, and I had a team. there were people following it on their phone on Poker Go.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I did have one of my friends had a piece of me, was watching from home. So we all had a little thread, a little chat, and they would relay me information that way. And
is there any information that they got from the guys calling the match that made sense as information for you to get?
I'd like to think that we were a step ahead of Phil or any commentator. But one interesting point was Phil noticed the tell on Miles and broadcasted the tell to live television. I think what I had heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I think Madisau figured out the tell, tweeted it, and then Helmuth saw it and put it out there on TV, which I think there's arguments for both, whether you should or shouldn't do that. So, people on my rail were pissed, like, hey, these guys are playing for millions, just let them play. And I actually do wish that I think the coaching and having players on my rail and stuff, it helped me tremendously. I had some brilliant minds, and I don't know if I would have won the heads up without them. But I couldn't help but feel like it's a different form of poker. With all the cheering going on, and especially in the beginning, like we couldn't even talk to each other because it was so loud. And so there was a part of me that was like, I wish they would just put us in a bubble and just let us play. And, we don't look at our phones. We don't talk to, people on the rail. We can't hear people cheering, let them cheer all they want. But I'm the type of person, like, I want to talk to people at the table. I don't want to listen to some guy rooting for Linsky who had the loudest rail of all time.
Right. No, you make a really good point. Because you think of poker as like a real sort of, there's a solitudinous quality to it. It's really when those two guys, you see them on television, are just up against each other, you and Tony, it's just the two of you. And then you put it in a context, which is that it is just the two of you, but then you're meeting with your camps. But apart from that, you're having to deal with that room. Like, it's really tough to have like a room that is rooting against you when you fold. You have to, I guess, tune that all out.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't matter.
That part
didn't bother you?
Yeah, it didn't bother me per se, but like we said earlier in the show, poker's a social game. I don't want to just sit there and play my cards and not, interact with people. That kind of I think it shuts me down to a degree as far as like, being open and happy and whatever goes.
It's almost like a factory job at that point when there's no communication.
Sure.
I want to enjoy myself at the table.
But it's another thing happening, as you point out, when both guys are there and you're meeting with your camp. And
right. This is a form of poker that it'll never happen anywhere else. You're not going to play in your home game and, have like a team of coaches helping you out or your local, tournament series. And when you final table, like, the hands are broadcasted on ESPN so that, you can relay information to each other. Like, this form of poker is, once a year type thing.
When I play in Vegas, or when now I'm trying to learn a game called Omaha, so I'm trying to play a little bit more Omaha, and I'm playing in Vegas. It was just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm there with guys who are all pros, or at least they're pretty good Omaha players anyway. And I was pretty open. Like, after a hand, I go, what do you think of the starting hand? Do you like this or what? And some people would tell you things, others wouldn't, and you begin to realize, oh, that person's telling me that, but that's not quite the truth. And in other words, at a poker table, you're not always getting the straight scoop from people who are playing against you.
And that's definitely, something that's up for debate. For me personally, I'll never lie to a person, but I might not give them that information because, poker is a game of information. So each
but you
case,
say I don't want to give you that information.
Yeah, sometimes sometimes people will be like, let me see your hand. I'll just be like, you guys are too good. I can't show you what I'm playing with. Or whatever. So it's a case-by-case basis, and I don't know that I know which cases are where you should share information and where you shouldn't, but I just try to make the best judgment call at that time.
What if someone's not a novice? You're obviously not playing with novices generally, but if someone is a newer player, like, what are the qualities they bring to the table that would make you want to help them versus that would make you go, screw this guy?
People that are pleasant have like an automatic hand up when it comes to me wanting to help people.
Yeah.
If someone's genuinely nice and genuinely trying to learn the game, I'm going to help them. And it's also not just a factor of being nice. It's also there's a side of incentive where like, if you don't help this guy out and he gets buried, he's just never going to play the game again. It's not going to be fun for him. So, help him out. Help him try to win a little here and there. He's still losing big overall. But at the same time, if someone's just like a miserable being and I don't want to play with him, then I'm probably not going to engage in conversation and help him.
And is the interest in keeping that person in the game of poker, is that an interest of the health of the game of poker, or is that an interest of like the health of the possible money pool out there for you?
It's kind of the same thing I was saying before. There are incentives for the game of poker, but for me personally, it's more about enjoying life, enjoying your company. The guy knows that if you help him, that he's not going to be a winning player right away. I'm not faking him out saying, hey, these are the best tips you're going to get and you're going to crush this game. That's not what's happening here. There are times where I'll just be like, that's a very bad hand and here's maybe what you could have done, but really maybe you should stop playing these stakes. That's the best advice you could give someone, really. Sure. Go down to some smaller stakes, learn the game a little bit more, come back, something like that.
But the balance is, when you're playing at high stakes, there's always and the nature of the game is adversarial. So
sure, it is. But there's also a camaraderie around poker that's one of the reasons I love the game so much. So you're right, it's adversarial, but not everything is being thought of as I'm gonna pal around with the new Jillionaire guy who sat down, the new whale, so that I can suck him into the next. I really don't think that that's happening. There's often.
There is a darker side of poker where you're trying to exploit people, and that's how you make money. But I think one of the coolest things about this final table was, people talk about the camaraderie, but a better way for me to articulate it is the fact that nobody was really taking it that personally. I think there were some situations where some people took stuff personally. But overall, we're all, we all play the game of poker. We've all played it. We know you get beat, and sometimes you beat people. That's just a part of the game. And, for example, someone like Linsky, who had such a huge chip lead, when there was however many players left. I don't think he won a hand in the final table, but he just knows it's a part of the game and that people beat you, and there was no animosity or tension towards me and him, and we're sitting right next to each other. It was just really nice.
Right. Yeah. I found your interview on CNBC Power Lunch, which I love.
Super exciting to have this because this is the dream when everybody starts playing poker.
This is the Vegas Strip behind John Cynn. He's holding up the World Series bracelet.
Year that people look forward to.
You did look exhausted. Describe that moment for me when you won.
The moment was definitely incredible. I had no idea what to expect. It was definitely bittersweet. Didn't want to celebrate too much in front of Tony.
That was so cool of you to even
obviously
note that.
one of the biggest accomplishments.
I've had. You didn't want to even be too excited when this guy's just devastated winning second now.
I just would never feel good about that.
Yeah. That happened at Wimbledon too, with the two players who played, into hour 6, where the winner was just like, yeah, no, I feel good, but someone just had to lose this vicious thing.
Right, which is just it was such a. This is one of my favorite questions.
Your last name, Cynn. Is that your real last name, or do you just like having a name that's synonymous with with Cynn? Vegas.
Cynn City. You can call it Cynn City now.
Right. That is my real last name, my real pronunciation. Well, as I've been pronouncing it my whole life. In Korean, it's Shin.
Oh, okay. But it works much better in Cynn when you're in Vegas playing poker, don't you think?
Yeah, so short story, when my uncle came over, he changed the spelling, but he still pronounced it Shin. And then when my dad came over, kept the spelling and decided to pronounce it Cynn. So yeah, I've been Cynn, and then somehow Cynn City.
You're a first-generation American? Your father immigrated?
Yeah, my parents.
So you had to tell your first-generation Korean parents that you're quitting your job to be a poker player.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
I was the black sheep in the family.
I asked you about that on the radio, and you mentioned that they were not keen on it, but then
2016, when I got on airtime. Because as far as they know, poker is a degenerate gambling activity. But when I got on TV, some of their friends came up to them and said, oh, wow, your son's a professional poker player. That's so cool. There was a lot of respect for that position.
Right.
And at that point, they were like, okay, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe we can tell our friends and our family that he plays poker professionally.
Well, as someone who dropped out of college and had to tell his Jewish mother that I'm dropping out of college to make fun of sci-fi movies with a robot, with a gumball machine robot, I can relate to your choice.
I hope that wasn't the pitch. That is a
It was pretty close. I mean, it was pretty apparent. That's what I was doing.
Is there anything else I've left out? I felt like we got to...
Oh, you didn't ask for his autograph.
Oh, no, but hang on a second. I do have to ask you one last thing. Last thing, many poker players, and yourself among them, are into cryptocurrencies.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, tell me why so many are into cryptocurrencies in the poker world. Is that just because it's a gamble?
Actually, CNBC, they asked me a similar question. I think there's qualities that translate over well from one or the other. And, gamble is definitely one of them. Or as I would say it,
strategy.
No, volatility or variance. The ability
risk
to
tolerance.
Yeah, and the ability to fade it and know that when you make the right decision, sometimes things don't go your way, and sometimes when things don't go your way, they really don't go your way. I think that is an important characteristic. And then also I talked about the ability to break down each individual situation. You need strong analytical skills in both.
I'm sorry, I was just going to, but you're into ICOs, which are not even the Bitcoin, sort of the newly minted coins, right? Or the ones.
I mean, they are different coins.
Initial
They're new
currency
coins.
offerings. Is that ICO?
Initial
coin offerings,
right? I'm mostly into ICOs, but to say that I'm not, and that's not for me to say like I don't believe in Bitcoin or something like that. I think Bitcoin is great.
Oh yeah, I was just trying to more get onto why the ICOs are so attractive to you.
Oh yeah, I think when you invest in crypto, there's a couple different methodologies, I guess, and some is like find the Bitcoins like Bitcoin and Ethereum and just hang on and don't look at it. But then if you really want to get into it, I felt like the ICOs had way better return rates, and there's a lot of researching that you need to do to make sure to see which ICOs you think will be successful and which one won't.
Are they mostly short-term plays or are they mostly longish kind of things?
I think there's both, but I think more long-term than short-term. Although I do think the ICO market now, people think there's a lot of just money being rotated around and flipped. So I think the overall market, people are short-term flipping, but I think there's both for sure.
So you've got your money. You're doing interviews. Your world is going to change. You'd mentioned to me on the radio that your plan had been to sort of travel. This is before you won.
Right.
Now your plan can still be to travel, but now others will, I suspect, be issuing invitations. And
you can upgrade your flight.
And I can upgrade my flight.
Yeah. I mean, your world should open up in a really cool way.
Yeah, and I think the biggest change for me is just going to be that I don't have to stress about the money and where it's going to come from. Like, I wanted to do a year of traveling, but it would have been tough to keep finding cash, to keep, moving crypto into cash and figuring out, like, can I afford this? Can I afford that? Especially
were things tight before you
went? Yes and no. The cash was tight. I actually borrowed cash from a friend, and I set aside some crypto, and I said, if I don't cash, I will liquidate this crypto and I will pay you back. So in a sense, it was tight, but I do have a decent amount of crypto that I could.
Cash flow problem, not a wealth problem.
Sure, and I wasn't like particularly wealthy. This money is life changing, and I'm definitely, I don't think it's going to affect the way I travel that much because I do love, staying in hostels and stuff like that and exploring things without, spending crazy amounts of money. Except on food. I love food, and I'll spend some money on food.
Stay in rooms with safes. You should stay in a room with a safe, I think.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not going to go around and carry like $10,000 with me. Like that's just not a part of the plan. So.
But you'll wear the bracelet everywhere.
Yeah, I might make it into like a necklace or something and carry it around.
You're a great ambassador for poker. You're so gracious. You're so...
Humanity in general, I'd say.
I know.
It
might be humanity in general.
You're a good dude.
Could be, Josh. Could be. John Cynn, WSOP champ. Congratulations. Thanks for spending some time with us, man.
Of course, my pleasure.
Really proud of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's it. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with John Cynn, the 2018 World Series of Poker main event champion. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you haven't written us a 5-star positive review on iTunes or any of the other forums that take 5-star positive reviews, please do that as well. However you support us, I thank you. Until next time, Bye-bye.
I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, it's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
edge-show.com.